Welcome back to my channel, Theater from My View. I am Amanda Washington, and this is
Sheldon.
I had the pleasure of going to grad school with Sheldon. He is an amazing actor, and now he's working out in the profession. He is also a professor, so it's great to have him on TFMV with me today. We are talking about
Sugar in Our Wounds by Donja R.
But before we get into it, a few things.
One, TFMV posts a new video every Friday at noon.
So two, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because
three, next Friday is coming quick, fast, and boom, in a hurry. And you don't want to miss it. Are you ready?
Let's get into it. So a quick synopsis of Sugar in Our Wounds. The year is 1862, and the Civil War is causing wreckage throughout the United States. However, Sugar in Our Wounds isn't about the war, unless we're talking about the domestic and spiritual war happening amongst the slaves in the Deep South. Sugar in Our Wounds explores what it meant to be Black, queer, and in the Deep South during a time when heterosexuality was the only acceptable norm in the United States. So, Sheldon, I invited you on this channel because I knew you would love this script. So, tell me what you thought about it. What did you think of Sugar in Our Wounds?
Ooh, so Donja R. does a great job with his intersectionality.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about, like, what I said in the intro of Black lives and queer lives, and then how those two meet and...
Yeah, and how prevalent it's been in history, but, you know, it doesn't really get talked about.
You're so right, because I can honestly say this is, I believe, the first time that I'm hearing about people of color having a love life, but also having a love life where people are of the same gender. Yeah. And I really appreciate reading that narrative. I think he does a great job with intersectionality. I think he does a great job also with giving us characters that we can see ourselves in.
I think because we are defined by our relationships, and he does a great job in building relationships with the characters that he's written. And it's not so much caught up on this character is who they are, and there's nothing changing that or anything at all. But we actually get to see them grow as they interact with people and as new situations kind of arise. And I know from my situation, like from my experience of like reading some places, like sometimes it becomes more about the character's own personal journey, and this made me actually think about the unit. How
Aunt Mama, how she's not really related to any of them, but she's related to all of them.
Right.
I was thinking about that, but also how you were talking about family in this script, and how Henry's one of the main characters in the show. He comes in and he says, "I don't have no family." Mind you, like, keep this all in mind. This man barges in at the middle of night amongst three slaves who have become a family. They're not actually genetically related. And he's like, "I just need a place to sleep." But then he continues to say, "Y'all ain't my family," while these people are offering him shelter and love.
And food.
Yes.
And food.
Yes, and food. And I just find that so interesting how from the beginning of the play to the end of the play, Henry has changed his tune. And it seems as if while a lot has happened, nothing in a sense has happened. It seemed as if that change almost happened so subtly and so smoothly.
And when I got to the end of the script, I asked myself why. Oh my God, the imagery and and the use of, I wanted to say like onomatopoeias.
I was gonna say onomatopoeia does show up, but like you said, the use of imagery. about how his family is in that tree. And it's so beautiful because he goes to that tree for solace, and when he's at that tree, he hears his ancestors speaking to him, and it's like they're pouring into him. And then what also amplifies that sound is that Aunt Mama, who once again, she's related to all of them, but she's not related to any of them genetically. She's like, James, your destiny is going to be different from the voices you're hearing in this tree. Because a little bit of backstory, the tree that James likes to go to in this script is where all of the male ancestors have been hung from. And so while he finds solace, there is that sense of dread. And so, like you said, the imagery, it's just beautiful how something so scary can also bring you peace.
Yeah, because the idea that he keeps running to the tree, knowing what that tree represents, it reminds me of the use of the N-word in the show, on how they...
It's definitely used a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
The black people were taking ownership of it again, and how they were taking something that was used as like a negative way to, like, you know, degrade somebody, and as a way to, like, well, I'm gonna take this word and give it back power. It's almost the same way of how they're treating the tree, of how this tree used to be, you know, that's where you go to get hung. Honestly, even with all of that dark history, even reading, I still felt like the tree was like this peaceful place, because you know, even James and Henry would go there and they would just like gallivant and have like the best of times.
Gallivant and have the best of times. When you read the opening of the script, I believe it talks about, let me just see. I know Donja starts it off by saying, we hear humming. And for some reason when I read it, I don't know how you felt, I never stopped hearing the humming. But as the script grows, you hear the progression of dogs throughout, dogs barking and then coming after or hunting someone down, but also that humming that in my mind also continued throughout the script. So it's like the juxtaposition of otherworldly, spiritual, ethereal in a sense, but then also that the immediate danger that's still there to keep you grounded. And like you were saying earlier, how do you take back that power, and how do you make it malleable so it's not something that cripples you, but something that reminds you of your plight, but also energizes you to keep going forward in your plight?
I couldn't stop hearing the dogs bark. Like, I had to be reminded that there was still humming and singing happening from this, you know, ancestral spiritual tree. I wonder how that would even play out on stage in terms of how do these characters stay focused with like all of this noise kind of going around, because it's like you're getting drawn by this spiritual energy, but then you're constantly getting like brought back down to like the harsh reality that you're in.
The harsh reality, the spiritual energy, and then, so let's talk about something that we mentioned, or at least I mentioned in the synopsis, of these characters being queer. I think, once again, with the spirituality, harsh reality, you hear the humming and you hear the dogs bark, and it's like the humming is where you want to be. It's where you want to live, and it's Henry and James' love story that you want to see flourish, but then those dog barks remind you that maybe this isn't the time for it to flourish. But then you have the character Aunt Mama, who is like, look, I've done some things, and not just with the man. And so I loved seeing how she told those two men, or at least she told James, it's okay to be this way. It's okay to be who you are. What did you think?
As I was reading, I said, Aunt Mama's going to be okay with it. I felt like from the jump, Aunt Mama was like, when you go through life, there's this like reoccurring word, love. It's, when we look at today's world, it's nice to see that, you know, people are finally like leaning more towards that type of aspect of like, hey, love. This is what it is. It's love. And Aunt Mama talks about how, you know, we're all spirits and just a different body. And I think that is so important to know. I think her wisdom and her age gives like James and Henry a little solace. I was more interested in how Maddie and Isabel reacted.
I I was not a fan of them. I was not a fan. Let's just talk about it real quick. Okay.
Let's hit it.
Maddie and Isabel, they're not my favorite people because both of these women are manipulative. Let's just call it what it is. They are manipulative. And if you read the script, there are some things that both of these women do that I just don't approve of, in the sense of Maddie takes advantage of Henry's body. Whether she sees it as taking advantage or not, it is trigger warning rape, what she does to Henry. One, I appreciated Donja for writing that because not enough stories are told about men being the victims in sexual assault stories. I appreciate him for writing that. Two, I didn't appreciate Maddie, though, being the way she was and saying, oh, this is okay, this is fine. Just because you have an available partner there does not mean you get to take advantage of their body.
Not even available.
You're right.
He said no.
He said no. He did not give consent. And I think that's what really drives me up the wall, especially as an intimacy director. It's like, there was no consent given. None.
None whatsoever. And I thought about Henry's reaction between Maddie and Isabel. Because Isabel did the same thing, but Isabel wasn't able to go all the way like Maddie was. I
think there was a difference, honestly. Henry and Maddie, even though Maddie did force herself on Henry, I think Henry saw that as propelling the African-American race. Like, even though he is attracted to men, this is his way to propel the African-American race, since we haven't yet found a way for two men to have a baby biologically together.
That's interesting.
I think, even though he didn't say okay, I think that was his form of, I'm doing this for the culture. Yeah. With Isabel, it's like, there's no way on God's green earth that I'm about to have a baby with you. Or about to give you any type of sexual pleasure. And so Henry runs away. And I'm like, yes, go Henry, run. Please run for your entire life.
At this point in time, Henry and James weren't as close with Maddie. Is that fair to say, you think?
I think so. I'm making sure I'm having the storyline right. So it's Maddie, trigger warning, rapes Henry. And then Henry and James get together. And then it's Isabel sexually assaulting him. Yeah.
This was also after the conversation that Aunt Mama spoke with James about her past and about what love is. And it's like, I see the way that you and Henry look at each other. That starts to scare James and Henry a little bit. But James starts to try to call out their relationship for what it is. And I think had that happened before, I think he also would have, like, forceful, like, turning down Maddie.
Yeah, forceful, like, don't take advantage of my body. Yes.
Hello.
I agree.
The use of language.
Yeah, that's big.
The entire script is written in Ebonics. I was like, had I not grown up in the culture?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been able to grasp some of the spellings, because I never actually seen some of these words spelled out before. I've heard them, we sometimes when we, as actors, when we do African-American pieces that are period, we add the Ebonics on top of the script. But this was the first time that I've read a script that actually had it already there for us.
Yes. There's this quote, and I believe it's by Bell Hooks in her book, Teaching to Transgress. But essentially what she's saying is, this is the oppressor's language, but I must use it to speak to you. And when she's saying this is the oppressor's language, she's talking about the English language. And so what I love what Donja has done, Donja R, love, LOL, is he has said, okay, yes, I have to speak to you in English, but I'm going to make it as close to my culture and my roots as possible by making it in this Ebonics, or really writing it in this Ebonics dialect. I don't have to communicate with you in just one form, or the form that is quote-unquote acceptable by the Eurocentric norms. I'm going to go on how I feel these characters would have spoken.
It made me draw a connection, because one of the shows that we worked on, August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of, even some of the most uneducated characters had some of the most, clearest, Eurocentric diction. And it just kind of shows you how many facets, people of color, specifically Black people, can write in to tell their stories. But who is the show for? Sometimes look, I read Chekhov, and Arthur Miller sometimes, and I read it and it's like, okay, I know what they're saying, but I don't know what's going on because the way that they're talking is not
it's not native to us. It's not innate.
Yeah.
And I think Donja has written something that was innate. And granted, there were certain words I was like, we're going to need to take a slight moment to dissect. But as soon as I dissected it, it's like, oh yeah, I remember hearing my grandmother speak like this, or hearing my aunt speak like this, or at some moments speaking like this, and how over the years I had to translate or code switch so that I was acceptable in other people's eyes and they could quote unquote understand me. And so, like we're saying, I just love that while American Standard Eurocentric English is fine, there's also different ways you can do this type of English and it be a representation of your culture. Yeah. Something else that really caught my eye in the script is fate. And can you escape your fate, or is it preordained?
Ooh.
Earlier, we talked about how James can hear the male ancestors in the tree that he likes to go visit. And how Aunt Mama has said, hey, your destiny is going to be way different. But, spoiler alert, at the end, his destiny is not that different. This woman, Aunt Mama, who has been able to see so many things, she has vision, in my opinion. She has vision, she has foresight, she knows what's happening, she knows what's going to come. So to boost James' ego so high and say, hey, you're not going to be like this, you're going to be very different from your male counterparts or your male ancestors, and you're going to not be hung from this tree, and then at the end, once again, spoiler alert, he does get hung from this tree. It makes me question, can you change your fate? Can you escape it? Or is it preordained, even if someone who has vision, who has foresight, has been speaking into you that this is going to be different?
With Isabel, it wasn't rape. It was like sexual harassment.
Yes.
Assault.
Yes.
That prompted Henry to like run away. And I think James was given a choice. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing in all of this when we talk about fate is that like we do have choices. You know, now can we escape fate completely? Oh no! Oh no! But I think had he chosen to run away with Henry, he would not have succumbed to like the gruesome death that he endured.
But was it easy?
No.
To make that choice?
No.
Why didn't he make the choice to run away with Henry then?
That's a really good question. I think he was honestly scared.
I think that's why this show is so lovely to do right now, because he does talk about people who are particularly queer, a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and he's giving a voice to stories that we don't hear. And you're like, Amanda, we hear about the queer community a lot now. They're not really undercover. No, I'm talking about the queer community during slavery, okay? That's what I'm talking about, and I think that's why we need to be doing these stories, because while I know they existed, I don't know how they lived. I don't know what their life was like. And if you watch the opening video that I give for Donja R Love in the previous week, you understand why he named it Sugar in Our Wounds. So it's a story that I think gives people power to know that they're not alone in their plight.
It just kind of reminds me of all that with who controls the narrative again.
Yeah, once again, who controls the narrative and making sure that voices are represented in theater. Just because we may not like those voices doesn't mean they shouldn't be represented. And also, like, I think remember this, one of my biggest things is like also like in just history and giving honest, fleshed out, like honest, fleshed out, authentic characters.
Yes.
Such a juicy conversation. Well, thank you so much for being here, Sheldon. It has been great having you on TFMV. And I wish you the best in your career. I know we'll be working together soon.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. See you all next week. Bye-bye.